There is one memory of you that your soulmate has never been able to replace, and they may have only realized that recently. It was probably not the most dramatic moment between you. There may have been bigger conversations, deeper promises, emotional goodbyes, and unforgettable days, but this particular memory carries something different. It has a feeling attached to it that they cannot recreate no matter how much time passes. Perhaps it was the way you looked at them when they were speaking. The way you laughed at something nobody else found funny. A quiet conversation when everything around you seemed to disappear. Or simply the way they felt completely understood without having to explain themselves. At the time, they probably did not recognize how important that moment would become. They were living inside it, and people rarely understand the value of something while they still have it. But now, when that memory returns, something inside them shifts. They may suddenly compare it to moments they have experienced since, and nothing seems to carry the same emotional weight. They may have met new people, created new memories, laughed again, and continued with life. But somewhere underneath all of that is one quiet realization. Nobody has recreated that feeling. And that may be why this memory has been affecting them more deeply than they expected. They are not simply remembering you. They are remembering how they felt when they were with you. If these messages have brought comfort, clarity, or encouragement into your life, and you genuinely feel led to support this ministry, there is a donation link in the description and pinned comment. Your support helps us continue creating these messages for people who may be going through their own emotional seasons. Please give only what you can comfortably afford. There is absolutely no pressure. And if you cannot donate, your like, subscription, comment, or sharing this message with someone who needs it is already meaningful support. Because your soulmate may now be realizing that some memories do not stay powerful because we choose to hold on to them. They stay powerful because something about them was real, and no replacement has ever felt quite the same. And now that this memory has returned, your soulmate may be noticing something they did not expect. It keeps appearing in places where they were not looking for it. They may hear a song that has nothing to do with you, pass a familiar place, hear somebody use a phrase you once used, or experience a quiet moment that suddenly takes them back to that one memory. Sometimes it may happen when they are completely distracted. They could be working, driving, talking with someone, or simply sitting alone, and without warning, the emotional atmosphere of that moment returns. Not the entire past, not every detail, just that one feeling. And this is what may be affecting them deeply. They may have believed that moving forward meant leaving the past behind completely, but they are discovering that some memories do not disappear simply because life continues. They become quieter, and then something unexpectedly brings them back to the surface. Your soulmate may even have tried to understand why this particular memory has survived when so many other details have faded. They may not remember every conversation you had, every date, every message, or every small disagreement, but they remember this. They remember how they felt. And the more they notice it, the more they may begin comparing it with the experiences they have had since you. This does not necessarily mean nothing good has happened in their life. They may have experienced happiness, met wonderful people, built new routines, and created moments worth remembering. But comparison is not always about deciding that one person is better than another. Sometimes it simply reveals that one experience was completely unique. They may realize that what happened between you had a particular emotional atmosphere that cannot be manufactured. It belonged to that exact time, those exact circumstances, and those exact versions of both of you. Perhaps that is why attempts to replace it never worked. You cannot recreate a memory by repeating the same external details because the people have changed. Even if they returned to the same place, heard the same song, or had the same conversation, something would be different. And your soulmate may be slowly understanding that. They may have once believed that enough time would make the memory ordinary. Instead, time has made them understand its significance more clearly. Distance removed the noise surrounding the connection and left behind certain moments that still carry emotional weight. One of those moments is yours, and perhaps they are now wondering whether you remember it too. That question can be surprisingly powerful because they have no way of knowing what that moment meant from your side. Maybe you remember it exactly. Maybe you barely think about it anymore. Maybe you remember something completely different as the most meaningful part of your connection. Your soulmate cannot know, and that uncertainty may be part of why the memory keeps returning. They may find themselves thinking, did they know how much that moment meant to me? And perhaps the answer is that you never could have known. People do not always announce the moments that change them. Sometimes a person smiles, says goodbye, continues with their day, and only years later understands that something important happened in that ordinary moment. Your soulmate may now be looking backward with that kind of understanding. They may realize that the memory was not significant because it was dramatic. It was significant because, for a brief moment, they felt something completely natural. They did not have to perform. They did not have to protect themselves. They did not have to wonder whether they were enough. They simply existed with you, and something about that simplicity stayed. And that is why the memory may be affecting them now. They are beginning to realize that the hardest things to replace are not always the grand experiences. Sometimes they are the quiet moments where your presence made life feel different without either of you realizing it. And this is where the memory may begin to mean something much deeper to your soulmate, because they are slowly realizing that they are not simply missing an event that happened between you. They may be missing the version of themselves that existed in that moment. That is a completely different realization. At first, they may have thought they were remembering you because they missed your presence, your voice, your attention, or the connection itself. But the more they revisit that particular memory, the more they may understand that something inside them felt different when they were with you. Perhaps they felt seen without having to explain themselves. Perhaps they felt accepted without having to prove anything. Perhaps they could be completely quiet around you without feeling uncomfortable. Or perhaps there was a sense of peace that they did not recognize because, at the time, it felt completely normal. Now, they may understand that normal feeling was actually rare. They may think about other people they have met and other moments they have experienced, and they may realize that something was missing. Not because everyone else was incapable of making them happy, but because nobody could recreate that exact emotional combination. It belonged to the two of you, to that particular chapter, and to the people you both were at that time. This realization can be difficult because it may force your soulmate to admit that they did not appreciate the moment while they had access to it. They may remember how casually they treated something that now feels precious. Maybe they were distracted by other problems. Maybe they assumed there would always be another opportunity. Maybe they believed you would always be there. And now they understand that some moments do not come back simply because we finally recognize their value. They may wish they could return to that exact day, not necessarily to change everything, but simply to pay more attention, to listen more carefully, to look at you a little longer, to understand what was happening while it was happening. That kind of realization can create a quiet form of regret, because there is no way to go back and experience the memory for the first time again. They can remember it, but they cannot recreate the innocence of it. And perhaps that is why the memory has become so emotionally powerful. It represents something that existed once and cannot be duplicated. If these messages have helped you feel understood during your own journey, and you genuinely feel led to support this ministry, there is a donation link in the description and pinned comment. Your generosity helps us continue creating these messages and reaching people who may need encouragement, reflection, and hope during difficult emotional seasons. Please give only what you can comfortably afford. There is no pressure at all. If you cannot donate, your support through subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this message with someone who needs it is already deeply appreciated. Now your soulmate may be asking themselves an even more uncomfortable question. What if I did not understand what I had until it was gone? Because that one memory may have become evidence that the connection meant more than they allowed themselves to admit. They may begin remembering other moments around it, and suddenly those moments connect like pieces of a picture. The way you looked at them, the things you noticed about them, the conversations that seemed ordinary, the comfort that existed between you without needing to be explained. They may realize that they were experiencing something they only learned to value after losing access to it. And this does not mean they are guaranteed to return or that the past will suddenly become the future. It means they are finally seeing the emotional significance of something they once took for granted. That is why the memory may be affecting them so deeply. It is not simply a reminder of you. It is a reminder of a feeling they now understand was rare. And sometimes, the heart recognizes the value of something long after the mind has convinced itself that it was already finished. And now that your soulmate has begun to understand what that memory really meant, they may be facing a question they never expected to ask. What exactly did they lose when they lost you? At first, they may have thought they lost a relationship, a connection, or simply a person who once mattered deeply. But this memory may be showing them that the loss was more complicated than that. They may have lost access to a version of themselves that only seemed to appear around you. They may have lost a kind of emotional safety they did not recognize at the time. They may have lost the ability to experience that particular moment again, not because happiness disappeared from their life, but because that exact combination of people, timing, circumstances, and emotion existed only once, and that realization can make an old memory feel unexpectedly heavy. They may begin wondering whether you remember it too. They may wonder if you ever think about that moment when you are alone, or whether it became meaningful only because they were separated from you. They may question whether you understood what was happening between you at the time, or whether you were simply living the moment without realizing how deeply it would remain inside them. This uncertainty can cause them to revisit your connection more often. They may start remembering conversations they had forgotten, looking at old messages, revisiting familiar places, or noticing small details they once considered insignificant. Not necessarily because they have decided to return, but because their understanding of the past is changing. The memory has become a doorway into questions they thought they had already answered. What if they had appreciated you more? What if they had listened differently? What if they had been less afraid? What if they had understood that some moments were not ordinary at all? And perhaps the hardest question is, what if you were feeling the same thing and neither of you knew how important it was? That possibility can be emotionally powerful because it makes the past feel unfinished without requiring you to believe that a reunion is guaranteed. Your soulmate may realize that there are things they cannot replace, but they also cannot demand that you return simply because they finally understand their value. They may be learning that regret does not create entitlement. Memory does not create access, and missing someone does not automatically mean that person belongs in your present. If this message is speaking to something real in your heart and you genuinely feel led to support our ministry, there is a donation link in the description and pinned comment. Every contribution helps us continue creating messages like this for people who are navigating love, distance, healing, and the questions that remain after meaningful connections change. Please give only what you can comfortably afford. There is no pressure whatsoever. And if you cannot donate, your support through liking, subscribing, commenting, or sharing this message with someone who needs it means more than you may realize. Now, your soulmate may be reaching an important understanding. Perhaps the memory is not painful because it reminds them that they cannot have you. Perhaps it is painful because it reminds them that what they experienced with you was real. It happened. It mattered. It changed something inside them, even if they did not understand the change immediately. They may have spent time trying to move beyond it, But moving forward does not require pretending that something meaningful never existed. And perhaps that is why this particular memory refuses to become ordinary. It carries a truth they cannot erase. There was a moment when being with you felt completely natural, and they did not realize how rare that feeling was until they could no longer reach it. They may now be looking at their past with more honesty than ever before, not idealizing everything, not ignoring the difficult parts, but finally giving one beautiful memory the importance it always deserved. And once they understand that, they may begin to wonder whether the memory was only meant to remain a memory, or whether it was trying to teach them something about what they truly value in love. And perhaps this is where the memory finally reveals why it has remained with your soulmate for so long. They may have spent months or even years believing that moving forward meant eventually replacing everything connected to you. A new experience would replace an old one. A new person would replace an old connection. A new chapter would make the previous chapter feel less important. But now they may be realizing that life does not work that way. Some memories are not meant to be replaced because their purpose was never to compete with anything that came afterward. That one memory became part of who they are. It carries a feeling, a lesson, and a version of themselves that existed only during that chapter of their life. And perhaps the deepest realization is that they are not actually searching for another person to recreate you. They are searching for the feeling they experienced when they were with you. They may have finally understood that the peace, comfort, understanding, or emotional safety they felt in that moment cannot simply be copied by finding someone who looks different but behaves similarly. It was created by two specific people meeting at one specific point in their lives. That is why the memory remains untouched. They may think about it when they are alone. They may remember it when something unexpectedly reminds them of you. And sometimes they may wonder whether you know that one moment still lives inside them. They may even wish they could tell you, not necessarily because they expect anything from you, but because there is something unfinished about carrying a memory that important without ever telling the person who helped create it. But your soulmate may also understand something important now. Remembering you does not mean they are entitled to return to your life. If there is ever another conversation, it would have to happen because both people genuinely choose it, not because nostalgia demands it. And if your paths never cross again, that memory can still remain meaningful without becoming a reason to stop living. That is the mature side of remembering someone. You can honor what happened without becoming trapped inside it. If this message has touched something personal in you, and you genuinely feel led to support this ministry, there is a donation link in the description and pinned comment. Your support helps us continue creating these messages for people who are navigating love, healing, separation, and personal transformation. Every contribution, no matter how small, can help keep this work moving forward. Please give only what you can comfortably afford and never feel pressured to donate. If financial support is not possible, your subscription, like, comment, or sharing this message with someone who may need encouragement is already a meaningful way to support us. And perhaps your soulmate is learning the same lesson from their memory that you may have already learned from your own journey. Some things cannot be replaced because they were never ordinary to begin with. They may have seemed ordinary while they were happening, but time revealed their value. That conversation, that look, that laugh, that quiet moment, that feeling of being understood without explanation, whatever the memory was, it became significant because it represented something genuine. Your soulmate may now realize that they cannot go back and recreate it exactly, and maybe they are finally making peace with that truth. They can appreciate it without pretending the past can be restored. They can acknowledge that you mattered without knowing what the future will bring. And if one day they do find the courage to speak about that memory, let them come with honesty rather than expectation. Let actions carry more weight than words. Let the present determine what happens next instead of allowing the past to decide it for you. Because your life is still moving forward, and your value was never dependent on whether someone eventually realized what they had. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this story is not that your soulmate cannot replace one memory of you. It is that the memory proves you left something real behind. You touched a part of their life that became impossible to erase. Not because you forced yourself to be unforgettable, but because something genuine happened between two people at a moment neither of you fully understood. And sometimes that is enough. Some memories remain because they remind us of what was real, what we learned, and what we should never again take for granted. Let that memory belong to its place in the story. Let your soulmate understand whatever they need to understand. And you keep becoming who you are meant to become, knowing that what was truly meaningful never needs to be chased to prove that it mattered.